Ahead and call to order the East Consolidated Zoning Board for April 2nd, here at 6:30. Could we go ahead and do a roll call, please?
Yes. Ken Sanderson.
Here.
Kelly Rast is absent. Fred Wingert.
Here.
Rod Richardson.
Here.
And Ken Klingensmith.
Here.
Thank
Perfect.
you.
And we go ahead and read the hybrid meeting?
Yes. This meeting is now being recorded in the board hearing room with zoning board members attending in person. There is also an option for virtual attendance on Zoom webinar. For Zoom participants wishing to speak, please use the raise hand function in the Zoom app at the start of the agenda item on which you desire to comment. Comments will be received from in-person attendees first, followed by Zoom participants. When it is your turn to speak, the moderator will recognize you by the name or phone number used to join the Zoom webinar, and your microphone will be unmuted. Please state your name and the community where you reside for the record, followed by your comments. All public speakers will be limited to 3 minutes unless the chair designates a different time period. If you have trouble with Zoom, please call 913-715-9666. Board members, staff, and presenters, please state your name every time you begin talking, and please speak into the microphone so your comments can be transcribed for the record. This is a public meeting. We are presenting live and recording the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Go ahead and review the agenda. Is there anything to add, delete, or revise on the current agenda? Hearing none, is there any disclosure of conflicts or interest or external contacts or discussions related to the 3 applications?
Nope.
All right, hearing none, we'll go ahead and approve the minutes. Do we have a motion to approve the March 5th, 2025 minutes?
So moved. Rod Richardson.
Fred Wingert, second.
Perfect. All in favor?
Aye.
And we'll go ahead and get a report of the county commissioners' actions along with the planning committee actions. Please, Sean.
Yes, good evening, Chairman, zoning board members, Sean Pendley, county planning staff. For Board of County Commissioners actions, the last East zoning board meeting in March, beginning of last month, you had one application you considered for the conditional use permit for Wolf Creek Golf Course driving range. If you recall, that was just the remand of the application for the hitting shed and that additional expansion of the golf course for the driving range. That was recommended for approval by this board. That is scheduled for final action by the Board of County Commissioners tomorrow morning. So that will be up for final action. No other updates on that or any other zoning board cases to BOCC. I could go on with the planning commissioners' actions. There was no meeting in March. That meeting was canceled. Likely the April meeting will be canceled too. We're at this time, we're working with our consultant team for the zoning and subdivision regulations update, and we have just received the first draft of Module 1. This is the first group of sections of chapters of our draft zoning regulations. Staff is reviewing that. What we want to do first is make some revisions to that, work with the applicant, with our consultant to update that. Then we'll bring forward those draft regulations to our advisory committee, which has, as you know, representatives from the zoning boards and the planning commission and other stakeholders in the county. We'll bring that forward to the advisory committee, likely will be mid-May. Then what we would like to do is have in the May planning commission meeting, present an update to the planning commission. That information once, and then we'll bring up updates to the zoning boards as well. But that'll be the first module. There will be other modules we expect, I believe, is it 2 or 3 or 4? I think there's at least four modules. So there'll be 4 different sections of the regulations that we'll be presenting. And hopefully with the final adoption would be likely early 2026. So we'll be bringing a lot of information on those regulations update soon. We do have a project website that was created as well. Sorry, I don't have that link handy, but it is on our county planning website. You can find a link to the project update, and we've got an online survey that we've been forwarding to our advisory committee and planning commission. And I don't know if that hasn't been already sent to the zoning boards. We'll do that as well. We'll forward that link. Anyone is welcome to submit a survey. I believe that is due back at the end of this month. We'll get this week. We'll get an update out to everybody on that. That's just a survey to provide additional comments. We've had some stakeholder meetings, but it's just based on the assessment. There won't be comments yet on the draft regulations. That'll come later. So there will be additional opportunities for the public and anyone else to weigh in on that. So we know that there's a lot of interest in it. We'll be sending out an update on that soon. So likely would be the First update to the zoning boards on this would be in the summer, probably in June. So look to hear more about that very soon. That concludes board reports. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions of staff on the board reports? All right, hearing none. Michelle, as we move on to the business before the board, is it best to just review all three applications together and then we can vote on individually? Just
No,
How are they kind of structured together? If you can help give a little insight on that.
so letter A is phase 3 of the preliminary development plan. So it includes 3 parcels. Letter B is a final development plan and a conditional use permit for one of those parcels. And then letter C is to split one of those parcels. They each have separate areas, so I would recommend to take them one at a time.
Okay, thank you. If we can, then let's go ahead and review application E25466 PDPAU, the preliminary development plan for 210th Street and Metcalf. Michelle?
Good evening, Michelle Leininger, County Planning Staff. This is a revised preliminary development plan for phase 3 of the Metcalf 211 project. These are the properties that are included in phase 3 to be revised. They're at the west end of 210th Street, west of Metcalf. So here is the PDP on the top left that was most recently approved in 2021. And then the bottom right shows the proposed revisions. So you can see that the top left has a lot of storage units, both internal storage units and just covered units. The revision actually has less property coverage, less impervious surface. And we'll talk in more detail about each of those lots. The number of lots is increasing. It's going from 2 to 3. However, the building square footage is decreasing. So the lot at the top or the north is proposed to be an indoor medical waste facility. The southwest lot is proposed to be enclosed, covered, and open boat and RV storage. And then the southwest or east lot is proposed to include contractor office and exterior storage. A final development plan for each lot will be required to be reviewed and approved before development can occur. So there are some deviations requested for this preliminary development plan. I'm just going to go through them quickly for each site. So this is the medical waste site. First, the applicant has requested deviation from the required space between buildings. So between buildings, the zoning regulations require 60 feet. The applicant is proposing 20 feet, and staff is supportive of that decision or that recommendation. Oh, there we go. Then it's for, the second one is for outdoor storage setbacks. 50 feet is required and the applicant has proposed 30 feet. It also shows a fence and this is consistent with the other 2 lots, which we'll talk about. Then the final deviation is for the parking. The stipulations in the PDP require that the parking be located in the side or rear yard. The applicant is proposing to have that in the front yard. Staff is supportive of this request. So on the RV and boat storage site, there's 2 deviations requested regarding the outdoor storage. First, the applicant is proposing a 30-foot setback along the west property line. Staff is supportive of this application. Again, it's an internal property line as the one on the previous lot. And a fence is included with that. The second is the applicant has proposed a 0-foot setback from the north lot line when 50 feet is required. Staff does not support this deviation. Staff is requesting that either a similar 30-foot setback be required as proposed in other locations on this lot and in the development, or the required 50-foot setback. And that is included in the recommended stipulations. And then for the last lot, the contractor and exterior storage. First, the setback for outdoor storage, again, required to be 50 feet, proposed is 30 feet on the side lot lines. Staff, again, is supportive of this request. Next is the loading areas. They are required to be, they're not allowed to be in the front. So they have 2 loading areas shown on this, and staff is not supportive of this request. And I have included a stipulation, recommended stipulation, that those be removed and relocated to either the side or the west. The side or the rear, sorry. So staff does recommend approval of the preliminary development plan for Metcalf 211 Phase 3 with the stipulations outlined in the staff report. Do you have a recommended or suggested motion? If you'd like to use it, I can answer any questions, and the applicant is also here.
Thank you. On this application, what changed from 2001? Just the options, not from the design layout, but did they originally have a plan to go one direction and then customers or development just changed, causing the need to come back here and make these changes?
Yeah, so the preliminary, your final development plan has to be consistent with your preliminary development plan. What's shown on the 2021 approval is either contractor storage, RV and boat storage, either enclosed or covered, and some open storage. And so they're wanting to change both the north lot and then the east lot. And then also a few months ago, you saw a revised final development plan for the east lot to enlarge it. So due to those proposed changes, they had to come back and revise the overall Phase 3 development plan.
Thank you. Any questions of staff?
Rod Richardson, of the two items that you're currently not in favor of on the second lot and the third lot, one relating to the 0 setback request and the other relating to the 30-foot versus 50-foot, if I understood that correctly, on the loading. Assuming that those requirements remain, that the condition is not granted, do you have an understanding of what that would require the applicant to do? In other words, I'm having trouble understanding why those changes were actually requested in the first place. And if you, on those 2 only, and if you are not recommending them, and should this board go along with you and reject those, what actually does that mean to the applicant?
So in the stipulations, it states that depending on, is specifically looking at that, the setback for this boat and RV storage, the requirement is 50 foot. Staff is recommending approval of a setback of 30 feet. Required is 50 feet. So in that stipulation, it's recommended that they either comply with the 30 feet or the 50 feet, whatever is recommended. Staff would be comfortable with either one.
But they're asking for 0, correct?
They're asking for 0.
Hmm.
And then for this one, so what they would have to do is just, I mean, we don't have elevations at this point. So really what they can do, and if you actually zoom in, you can see little doors across the back and then 2 doors on the front. They would just have to remove those doors and alter the access.
Okay. Well, perhaps the applicant can speak to those 2
Sure.
items. Thank you.
This is Fred Wingert. Can you go back to the previous? Yeah, that one. The setback is against the railroad track, correct?
No, it's against, so if you can see my cursor, this is the railroad tracks.
Okay.
And they have the appropriate 50-foot setback there. This is an internal lot line. So as this is also an internal lot line, this, and then on this north lot, this is also the internal lot line. So to be consistent, staff is recommending the 30 feet. Obviously, what's required of the 50 feet is acceptable. But at this point, staff can't support outdoor storage within 0 feet of a property line.
Okay, thank you.
Michelle, this is Ken. What's directly across from the loading area that we're looking to move to the side or the back in phase 2? Right.
So,
Where it's, I'm looking at
yep,
this document, but this phase 2, has that been approved and already in place?
yeah, well, so this is Lawn and Landscape Solutions. They have outdoor storage in this area for their plants and equipment and materials. They have approved all of that to go to the south, all the way to their property line, 50 feet from their property line. I can't tell you, I can't remember the last time I was out there if they have extended that yet or not, but they have permission and approval to extend their outdoor storage all the way to the south.
So across
What-
from the loading docks is essentially the gravel lot of landscape storage,
Yes, but it does face the road.
but it faces the road. It's not like it's a building or any future building that's already done and approved and in place.
No, there's no building there.
Okay. And then the last item that we had approved were all of the lots then between Metcalf and Floyd Street there is the most recent application that's come before us, if I remember correctly.
That's the most recent preliminary and final development plan. The most recent application is the lot line adjustment between the 2 lots that you see on the screen.
Thank you for that.
Mhm.
Any other questions of staff? All right, hearing none, thank you. Ed, if you want to have a couple comments from the applicant, thank you.
I do. Judd Clausen with Phelps Engineering, 1270 North Winchester, Olathe, Kansas. Appearing on behalf of Emic Feed. They're the property owners of this. And later with me tonight is Medical Waste Services. And so if there's questions about their facility, I would ask one of them to come up and answer your questions about that. But speaking to and I'm going to use your exhibits here, Michelle, kind of step through these. On the medical waste facilities, first of all, the front setback there, kind of off the cul-de-sac, we've matched the 50-foot along that property line. So it has that appearance. And along this public streets, we've been using 50-foot and we're going to continue to use 50-foot. Side yards have always been about 30-foot, and including the Lawn and Landscape Solutions, which you see in the upper right corner there, that's 30 foot. So we've kind of used 30 foot on the side yards. They're also agreeable to building the additional spaces there, and we'll get to that when we get to the final development plan. I go to this here, the 30 foot's consistent, which we agree with staff. The setback here, we're agreeable to changing that. So we're not going to propose a zero lot line. So I think maybe that was a little bit of an oversight between all the plan changes and stuff. So we're agreeable to staff and we'll comply with the 30-foot setback there. So we're consistent with the rest of the setbacks used in the development. And then on the contractor one here, again, 30-foot setbacks on the side, that's consistent. The reason that we asked for the 2 doors on the north side of that building is so this was purchased by Excavator. You may recall a few planning commission meetings ago, we had a final plat come through to move that property line to the west to create this parcel. He has since bought that and closed on it. And we've had further discussions, and he would like to make this site plan work at a preliminary level. This is kind of how far we've gotten with it yet. We're not ready to have you consider a final. We've got more thought and stuff to go into it. But the idea with those doors was that he could, occasionally pull a vehicle through, because there's actually 3 doors on the south side and the 2 doors on the north side line up with the 2 outside doors on the south side of the building. So you could have a pull through bay there if he needed it to happen. These are on each side of the office. And if we could ask for that exception, we're more than willing to, make the doors match the building so they're less conspicuous, add more landscaping, maybe even do some architectural treatments on the building so it doesn't appear like a door. So we can try to, do the best we can to administer that. You can see the 50-foot setback off of the street right-of-way line there to the setback line, and then the additional distance back from the setback line to the front of those doors, which sits behind the office. So it does sit back quite a bit of ways from the street. So that's the one thing we'd like to ask for. But other than that, I don't have any other comments at this point in time, and we were agreeable to the stipulations with the exception of this one ask.
Perfect. Any questions of planning board of the applicant? All right, thank you, Jed.
Okay, thank you.
Do we have anyone wants to speak on Zoom?
Yes, we do. Hold on one moment.
I'll go ahead and open our public comment section.
Okay, we have a Jeff S. I'm going to unmute your microphone now.
Jeff, you there?
Yes, I am here. Yes,
Perfect.
this is
Thank
Jeff Sablarich. I operate a business in the Metcalf 211 industrial park there. And my questions have to deal with the medical waste facility. It'll be very close to our facility, and moving from storage units to this is a big change. I just want to make sure I understand the impact to our location. And, so I don't know, should I ask? I have a handful of questions, so I ask them individually or just all together and then wait for a response.
If you can go ahead and just list out your questions, that would be the
Okay.
best approach.
Okay. One is, are there any of these types of facilities located anywhere else in Johnson County? Reading that's the first question. The second one is, what is the county's role in monitoring this facility, particularly if there are no others? I know in the staff report, it largely says the state will be, so is the county hands off, and it's only a state role to monitor what they do? Of course, my preference would be that the county has a role in that. Also reading the staff report, it seems to indicate that nothing is discharged into the atmosphere. So I'm assuming there would be no trash or debris or smells or anything, really no change from what it is now, which is, just a vacant land if nothing's being discharged. And then my final question is, and maybe this doesn't come up for today, is for the conditional use permit that's required. I think in the staff report, it only says up to 10 years, particularly if this is the first one in the county or we're not familiar with, these types of operations, that whatever conditional use permit is approved would be on the short horizon to make sure everything proceeds as expected. Thank you. Those are my questions.
Thank you, Jeff.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Klingsmith, Sean Penley, County Plan Staff. Since these questions are regarding the conditional use permit, I would advise, we've taken notes on that too. Staff can help answer these questions. So we would ask if the applicant can also help answer those questions when we get to that application. We'll be happy to answer those questions at that time.
And we also have one more person who's indicated they'd like to speak.
Yeah, so that may also be helpful to know which application specifically they'd like to speak on. Thanks.
Who do we have?
Okay. All right, Sean Baxter, we're going to go ahead and unmute your microphone.
John, can you hear us?
Sean Baxter, owner of Lawn and Landscape Solutions, property to the west, to the east of the medical waste facility. I second all of Jeff's questions and would very much like to know how that operation goes. I think that's probably in your next section, so happy to wait until the appropriate time.
Perfect. Thank you, Sean. Anyone else that you have?
No, that is it.
And not seeing anyone here, we'll go ahead and close the public comment section. We'll defer Jeff's questions to the application on the conditional use permit. Since that's a little unrelated to this application. And then we will have any further questions of the board, of staff, or the applicant.
Rod Richardson, to Mr. Clausen, perhaps. So I just want to make sure I understand that with reference to all of the requested changes that you've asked for, the one that you are currently asking for relates to the doors. Is that correct?
We're agreeable with staff on, the reduction from 50 foot to
Right.
30 foot and all the others. So we're on the same page there. The ones that we were disagreeing with the staff findings was the two front doors on the southeast
Right.
building.
So you're okay with getting rid of the zero setback that you're
Yes,
requesting?
we're okay with that.
So the one that you really want relates to the, so you can have the pass-through lane, et cetera, through the building?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And that's the only one we have a disagreement between you and staff on at this?
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
And we would be willing to look at additional measures at the time of final, whether it's the door architecture or something else on the building or additional landscaping to, help mitigate that request. And we understand that that's an ask from the county.
Great, okay, thank you.
Michelle, this is Ken Klingensmith. The staff's recommendation of not having the doors in the front of the buildings, because that is sort of a standard criteria for any type of a building structure in that type of setting. Is that correct?
It's actually a stipulation that was approved as part of the PDP in 2021. And that's a common requirement throughout the Metcalf 211 district.
So it's not specific, so it's more specific to this development than it is a county type perspective then, right?
I've been Mr. Chair, Sean Penley, planning staff. I believe that is correct. I don't know if anything in the regulations specifically prohibit any overhead doors facing a street. That was definitely one of those things, though, that was recommended in the Metcalf 211 preliminary development plan, as Michelle indicated. I believe this is one of those things that can be, staff's recommendation is for that to be not located facing a street, but I think that is something that the board can have a different finding and make a different recommendation as you see fit.
This is my thought process on that is the doors, considering what, Judd had said from Phelps Engineering about the architecture, the landscaping, the items that they bring back in the final plan, and that it's coming across from an outdoor storage, gravel lot area, so it's not facing any forward-facing buildings. It's also not facing, if you will, in this illustration, Metcalf, but that it's an interior project inside the development. I'm kind of inclined to not be against having that on the preliminary than having a closer look at that on the final.
Oh, excuse me, one last thing, Mr. Chairman. There also is, being a part of the preliminary development and as part of a planned zoning district, I think there are deviations that are allowed as well. I think this falls into that performance standards. So that is something, if you do feel it's appropriate in this case, you have that discretion to make that recommendation.
Other folks' thoughts on the door situation?
No, Rod Richardson, I agree with Chair on that. I don't think that it is critical in this case, but certainly I can see where it would be critical in other cases. But I think this has enough extenuating circumstances in terms of the exact location of these doors and their willingness to look at essentially mitigating any potential downside from a visual standpoint. Seems to me we should consider granting them that exception.
I agree.
Okay, we have a motion.
Fred Winger, Mr. Chairman, I move and recommend approval of the revised preliminary development plan or Metcalf 211 Phase 3 located west of the intersection of 210th Street and Metcalf Avenue for the reasons and including in the stipulations listed in the staff report.
And we would,
Friendly amendment
With-
to allow an exception for
With
that
the exception that we've discussed regarding the lot 3.
stipulation 17.
It's not actually lot 3.
Oh,
It's,
is it stipulation 17?
I would say just including, it's number 8. It's, oh, yeah, and 17. Deleting stipulation 17.
Deleting stipulation 17.
Vince Anderson, I would second that motion.
All in favor?
aye.
Aye. That's unanimously approved. And we'll go to the Board of County Commissioners.
This is Michelle Leininger. This will go to the Board of County Commissioners at their May 1st meeting, which is held in this room at 111 South Cherry Street in Olathe, beginning at 9:30 a.m.
Thank you. Our second application then is the conditional use permit, which is application E25467 FDP and E25468. The CUP final development plan and conditional use permit for the 7400 West 210th Street, which I believe is where Jeff and Sean's questions from the first application are more appropriate and will be discussed. Michelle?
Good evening, Michelle Leininger, County Planning Staff. Yes, what we looked at with the preliminary development plan really sets out the building, the outdoor storage, the access, the setbacks. And so the final development plan and the conditional use permits, as far as this lot, define the use and the use of both the facility and that outdoor storage. So this is the subject property that we're looking at roughly for the medical waste facility. And so here is the proposed development plan. The proposed use is a medical waste processing facility with outdoor storage of trucks and trailers for the business. The medical waste facility falls under a conditional use permit for similar uses such as landfills, hazardous waste facilities, similar types of uses, and then the outdoor storage. So this Site includes an office building, which is the smaller of the two, a warehouse building, and space to store trucks and trailers for the business. The warehouse building is where the medical waste is loaded, treated, and reloaded. Excuse me. The applicant has stated that they bring the medical waste, which is no liquids or human waste, but things like bandages and gloves and any type of disposable materials. And then they are treated in an autoclave where it's a vacuum system, and it renders these materials non-infectious. And then they are able to be taken to a landfill. No materials are stored outside or in the trucks on site. And this type of use is regulated through the Kansas Department of Health and Environment regarding air quality, medical waste processing, and disposal at the landfill. This plan meets the required regulations in the CUP section for that type of facility. So here's an aerial showing the surrounding zoning on top. As you can see, the subject property is completely surrounded by industrial zoning and directly adjacent to the rail line, which runs through the middle. So again, here's the site plan. Oh, I did fancy stuff too. There's a few stipulations that staff is recommending. The portion of parking has been requested to be deferred, which means that they would install a portion of it and then as needed, install the remainder. And staff feels that based on the applicant's narrative of the number of employees, that the required parking should all be installed with the time of construction. Another stipulation staff is recommending, there is an addition of some fence on the southwest side of the storage yard for screening. There is screening along the railroad. There's dense, actually on both sides of the railroad tracks, there's dense trees. And then, and then there's industrial again to the north. So staff feels that's sufficient, but, and then also included on the south and southeast side of that drive aisle and storage area, there's proposed a screening fence. Staff is recommending that this area, that the line in red be extended of that screening fence for screening of that storage area to the property to the south. And then additionally, the elevations, there need to confirm that 30% of the front facades are masonry as required. And no lighting information was provided with the final development plan. So there's a stipulation that shall be provided to meet the stipulated standards prior to the issuance of the building permit. They are shown a few lights on the elevations, but no details are provided. Staff does recommend approval of the final development plan and the 2 conditional use permits for the hazardous waste processing facility and outdoor storage yard for truck and trailers, subject to the stipulations outlined in the staff report. And just to note that the CUP terms are both noted for 10 years. And I can answer any questions, and the applicants are here to also answer.
All right, thank you, Michelle. Questions of staff?
Rod Richardson. I think the applicant probably should address my question, but I'll just ask you, one of the questions that I have relates to, in the unlikely event that this facility should catch fire, what dangers are presented to firefighters that might have to fight the fire if they have to enter the building, et cetera, or if the contents of the building should catch fire, does that present a danger? In context of that, I think you answered my question that no wastes are stored in the trucks that are parked there overnight, so that could be a problem with theft or vandalism or getting loose. I'm curious about your building security and whatever fire suppression systems you have there. Really just from the standpoint of, I don't know for sure. I mean, medical waste sounds dangerous just by it. I'm curious as to what enhanced danger the community might face as a result of that. And particularly on fire safety, if the firefighters had to go in, what they would need to know, and whether or not you might have visited with them about this at this point.
Michelle Leiniger, planning staff. I will answer what I can answer, and then we'll let the applicant give more details. The facility, based on the use, will be required to meet both the fire code and the building code regarding if they need sprinkler systems or not. As far as the facility burning and the safety issue of that, I'll let the applicants talk more about their process and the equipment.
Thank you.
Any other questions of Michelle? Okay, thank you, Michelle. We'll go ahead and hear from the applicant, or I believe in this case, potentially the business owner.
I'm just an agent. I'm Director of Operations, Jason McAnulty. So as far as,
Jason, you can give us your address for the record.
oh, okay, 11995 Highway 62 East, Harrison, Arkansas. As far as the dangers go for firefighters and that stuff, it wouldn't be any more dangerous than any other building that they're going to run into that's on fire. So I'm assuming they're going to come in with respirators and all that stuff on to begin with. As far as the stuff that we're doing in there, they're not going to be exposed to chemicals or anything like that. We don't do anything like hazardous waste. I know, yes, it says biohazard waste, but we don't have to be placarded. We're not picking up any chemicals or liquids or hauling any of that stuff or storing any of it. As far as narcotics go, we don't mess with that stuff either. You know, so if we're looking for what they're going to be exposed to other than smoke inhalation and stuff like that from equipment burning and that kind of stuff, it wouldn't be any different than any other facilities.
This is Ken. What's the hours of operation?
Currently it would be 6 to 5.
And the transportation are those tractor trailers coming in? Are they just regular box trucks? What's
Going to be, it would be a 20-foot box truck that are going to run routes throughout the area, and they're going to come in and stop at doctor's offices and dental clinics and nursing homes, if you will, and they're going to bring that waste back, and they're going to unload the waste. The guys in the warehouse are going to process it just as soon as it comes in, and then once it gets done processing, it's going to be put into a compactor and ready to go to the landfill once it's sterilized. There will be some trucks and trailers, like a semi truck on the yard, and that's what we were asking for the storage area to be for, would be for trucks and trailers and of that sort. And then also allowing the box trucks to stay on the facility.
We're not going to have excessive traffic on Metcalf of 18-wheelers coming and going from the freeway,
No, sir.
between 6 and 5.
No, sir.
And then if you could address a couple of the questions that Jeff had presented previously, related to there's discharge of anything out in the trash, which sounds like it isn't. You have no human waste. So it doesn't sound like there'll be any discharge into air.
No, so the steam that would be coming out of the boiler actually gets exhausted into a condenser, and that kind of takes care of everything being released into the atmosphere.
And then who is the responsible party for your business and like monitoring your facility and your operations, and who comes in and kind of gives you, like, if you will, a certification or
That'd be the
authorization?
Kansas Department of Health and Environment.
And so I'll kind of direct that question to Michelle as well then. So really from the county's perspective, they'd be looking to the state for any oversight of the operations of that actual facility.
Yes, they have met all the all the regulations in our code around that type of facility. And then any of the details as far as the hazardous waste, the air, all of that stuff, that's very technical requirements through the state and probably trickle down from federal.
Where's our next closest facility similar to this?
I honestly can't answer that question. I do not know where the next closest facility is to here.
You
Is there
have,
another one in Johnson County?
I'm sorry?
Is there another one in Johnson County?
I do not know.
Is there another one in Kansas City proper?
I can't answer that.
you're from Arkansas. Is there one in Arkansas?
There is.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, that is our home office. We have a processing facility is there as well.
This is Fred Wingert. How many of these facilities do you operate?
This would be number 2.
Okay. And do you operate, broadly speaking, hazardous waste out of hospitals? What different categories are there? I assume you mentioned.
There are a lot. So what we deal in is regulated medical waste, which is also known as red bag waste. There's trace chemo that we deal in, which is less than 3% of the trash that they're taking is considered trace chemo. So if you go in and have a chemo treatment done, that nurse that might have a gown on or gloves on, that's what's going into that container that's getting disposed of. So that would be something that we would handle. Sharps containers that you go to the doctor and you get a shot. You know, when they take that needle out of your arm, they put that in a Sharps container, that goes to us. That is what we handle. We don't, like I said, we don't do any narcotic stuff. So we're not messing with heavy drugs of fentanyl and all that stuff. We don't mess with that.
Is there any chance that you change the mission and this facility does other things like other categories?
I cannot see that happening.
But Michelle, if they did, that would bring it with that would bring it back through another conditional use of permit amendment.
This is Michelle. It really depends on how they change it. If they're just bringing in different types of things to process, probably not. You may have equipment change, which would be building code. Their permissions and what they can and can't do all lie with that state hazardous waste processor permit.
Why Stillwell?
I'm sorry,
Why this location?
why this location?
Stillwell?
It allows us for expansion and previously we run in 7 different states. We transport everything. So being up here would allow us just a better footprint for us to be able to grow as a company. And it's a beautiful area.
From a noise perspective, everything kind of contained is.
Very minimal. I mean, I wouldn't think you would notice it anything outside of property lines, truthfully.
And then this question might be for you or for Judd. Lighting stipulations, I kind of hate leaving those to just happen before a building permit, knowing how sensitive we are about lighting and standards. Can you comment on that?
Absolutely. From a lighting perspective, we would intend to comply with all county regulations, full cutoff fixtures. And we would submit that at time of building permit for staff review. We would not be anticipating anything other than maybe some parking lot pole lights. Again, full cutoff fixtures at the, required height, and some building sconces on the building that again would be full cutoff fixtures.
All down lighting.
Yes, sir.
Compliance with the Stillwell community plans, guidelines, things in that regard.
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions of the applicant?
Rod Richardson, I just in quick Googling this, I found 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, I think 6 or 7 other medical waste disposal, very similar to what they're doing, or in one case, more broadly in the Kansas City metro area. And I didn't get completely through the list, so obviously there are quite a few in the area. I didn't see one in Johnson County, but I didn't get all the way through the list, so. Let me ask you this, and I say this from long time service on Johnson County Fire District Number 2 Fire Board. I know that when these things come up, it's always helpful to have a conversation with the local fire folks about what you're doing, make sure they know how things work, et cetera. Would you entertain an additional stipulation in this that would do nothing more than require you to visit with the local fire department to acquaint them with what you're doing? So in the event there is something, they have prior knowledge of it, and so that you can then answer whatever questions they may have?
I think that'd be a great idea.
Okay, thank you. I'll include that if we get a motion.
This is Fred Winger. Would you be open to a 5-year permit versus a 10-year? This is obviously something a little unusual that the time that I've been on here. Would you be open to coming back in 5 years and getting
What does that process look like, Fred?
the similar process that you just went through?
Just coming in here and re-upping it?
Michelle, can you comment on that, the process? Pretty much.
This is Michelle. Yeah, the renewal, if you're not changing anything, we would just process it similar. We'd say, that we'd basically report on if we've had any complaints, if there's been any issues, and if there's no changes, we would report on that. If there are changes, then we would go back through the same exact process with new plans and all the things.
So, Mr. Chairman, Sean Penley, planning staff. So what this means is basically the term, you certainly with the conditional use permit, there are terms. So what would be a possibility the zoning board could recommend a shorter term being 5 years. So you would need to come in at the end of the 5 years. That would require another public hearing, go through the same process again. That's a typical process. We have the ability to recommend up to 10 years, but oftentimes some uses are shorter term is recommended for the initial term. So this is common and something that the zoning board may recommend.
This is Fred Wingert again. You may or may not be aware, but the Johnson County Commissioners approved a massive soccer complex on the north side of the railroad tracks. Would you consider for your truck routes to use the 223rd Street exit off of US 69 versus the 199th Street? That would, in essence, take your trucks, instead of exiting on 199th, you'd go on 223rd and come, 3 or 4 miles out of your way. But
Yeah, I mean, if we're worried about the safety of children, 100%.
okay. Would you consider in the conditional use permit not operating on Sundays? There was something in the verbiage about flex time and beyond hours, and maybe it's
Yeah.
doable, maybe it's not.
And the reason, for example, when the pandemic hit in 20, our current processing facility, we were running 16 hours a day, 7 days a week, just to trying to keep up with every facility in that pandemic. That's why we languaged it that way on being flexible for, heaven help us that we don't want to see another pandemic, but if we do, we would probably have to operate on that day. So, what I would tell you right now, currently in our home facility, we operate Monday through Friday.
Okay. Final question. Would you be agreeable that in the conditional use permit, that if you begin taking waste outside of the current category, that you would come back and seek approval from us?
Yes, sir.
Can we somehow, I don't have a problem with the current facility. Seems like it's, good use of this area. And I think there's a little concern maybe about mission creep, that we start with this and
Yeah, I'm sorry, what was the question again? I want to make sure.
About a different category. So if we start bringing in liquid waste or other types of categories of waste, that we would at least be consulted as a board. Because according to what Michelle said, this kind of opens the door for any kind of waste, which is not what tonight I'm voting for what we're agreeing to in terms of this type of waste being brought into this facility and they sell to, someone else, which is the way it works. And then they start processing different types of.
Yeah, that's a good question. In other conditional use permits, we have had some uses that would have a list of permitted uses that are associated with that. Unfortunately, I'm not familiar with the complete list of proposed disposal of materials that the applicant would be using. So one thing we'd have to be careful about, if we are going to stipulate only what is now proposed, we would have to have a pretty extensive list. If we miss something or there might be a confusion on that, I don't want that to be a possible confusion on enforcement. That's something that I think we would have to have a very detailed list from the applicant to know what can be restricted and what is allowed and what is not allowed. I don't think we have that, so I'd be cautious to recommend that as a specific stipulation without that list. The other point I wanted to make and a question, we do not have Public Works staff here this evening. I also think we need to discuss that possible recommendation of a specific route to restrict access, because I don't know anything about the alternative access to 223rd. And I do know that Public Works staff did review the proposed plan for the access off of Metcalf, and that would meet all requirements for access and capacity of the road. So that would be another item that I would prefer if we had discussion with Public Works staff before we had a chance to review that. They're not here this evening, but certainly we'll try to address any questions about that. But certainly I think it could be a list or a recommendation you could make. Just know that if there's any changes needed, we'd have to come back to the board first.
So this is Fred Winger again. Didn't you say that there's a category that you guys are processing? You used a term for that, but I didn't quite.
The regulated medical waste?
So what's being done here is regulated medical waste?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And and there's a different category for, say, biohazards if it was.
Well, there's hazardous waste, which would be like chemicals and where you would have to be placarded on your trucks to be able to haul it in and all that kind of stuff. There's different waste streams for sure. We do not deal in that.
So regulated medical waste is what we're talking about for this facility?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, I think this is the other component is it's non-placard. So
Right.
if they sold and someone came in and they started using placard to move product, then that would be.
Becoming an expert here, Mr. Chairman. Fred Winger again. When we have the dirt project over on State Line, we just made a recommendation instead of coming up to the new development that they use State Line. That's kind of what I was referring to, and I think the applicant agreed to use State Line instead of.
Yeah, and I agree with Fred. I think I will go back. I think the commissioners missed the boat on the whole soccer complex, not doing a turning lane, not making that be criteria. So if we're going to have soccer practice 7 days a week or 6 days a week down there, we're extended hours, we have lights, now we've got trucks and cars, and we've got a lot of activity between Metcalf and 207th. And I just think that the recommendation to say, let's alleviate some of that by voluntarily coming in a different way, not necessarily a stipulation, but it's just on the record, I think would help alleviate that.
We're not trying to limit how you do business. It might even be better for your drivers to not have to deal with as much traffic around that intersection. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, Rod Richardson, just out of curiosity, when you say regulated medical waste, who regulates that? Is that KDHE?
In Kansas is Kansas Department of
Okay,
Health.
so it's KDHE. All right.
You'll hang with us just for a moment. I wanted to see if Jeff or Sean are still on and had any additional comments, and just make sure that address their questions since they took the time to be with us this evening.
Yes, Jeff has raised his hand as well as Sean. I'm going to go ahead and unmute Sean. Give me one moment. Sean, you can go ahead.
Awesome. Thank you. Thank you for your time tonight. I appreciate the opportunity to speak before the board. I have great respect as I was in this place myself a year ago when I developed our property, and we have future developments to go. So I'm sure I'll be before you again. I have huge respect for Judd. Great civil engineer, helped me immensely, and I have a lot of respect for my neighbor Jeff, who has the most beautiful landscaping facility in Kansas City, coming from another landscaper. I just wanted to share that, I'm super concerned. As a property owner, I'm 43. I had envisioned paying this facility off and being able to have my kids have, the luxury of renting this facility or selling this facility when I pass on or retire or whatever. And I have big concerns about property value being located next to a hazardous waste facility. Jeff and I both are in the landscape business. We both actually cater to, I think, only Johnson County residents and a higher brow client. We meet with at least 15 clients a week inside of our facility selling pools, spas, cabanas, and landscaping. Less than 500 feet from this facility, we have live plant material that we're selling the public, some of that edible. We've got an out-of-state company coming into Johnson County. This is not a good fit for our county. And I'm just trying to be honest and speak in plain terms, but I just don't understand. This is a contractor's sort of nook and it's outdoor storage, and it just makes me very, very nervous. And the thought that there's no other consideration to start hauling other waste greatly concerns me. So I just wanted to add the commentary, and for what it's worth, again, much respect for the board. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean.
Okay, Jeff, I'm going to go ahead and unmute your microphone.
Jeff?
Sorry about that. Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to continue to speak. I really do appreciate that. I second everything that Sean said as the closest property owners to this facility. We have the public coming and going. I'm worried about, one, just what's occurring in that facility and how what's approved today gets like, well, we're adding this, we're adding this. The county doesn't have a primary role in supervising what goes on there. I'm not, sometimes the larger, the state governments, they're not so concerned about it, whereas the local government, should be more concerned about it. And, I'm concerned that, we don't have any of these in Johnson County already by any company, I believe, so we don't really know what happens, what happens in the future, what happens on a different timeline with traffic, all those types of things. I think the board should, consider all those things, that there's no history of what actually happens. Thank you.
Thank you, Jeff. Anyone else happen to be on for public comment? All right, perfect. As such, we'll go ahead and close public comment. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Discussion among the board?
Well, Mr. Chairman, Rod Richardson, comments from the last two Zoom participants, I think are, would probably be expressed by a lot of folks concerned about any new development, particularly if you put regulated medical waste in front of it. Although every time we walk into a doctor's office and you're in the exam room, you're sitting next to a can full of regulated medical waste. Here they dispose of it. And I had the same concern as and that's why I ask, who is regulating this? KDHE. No one in Johnson County is going to regulate this. in terms of what they do in there, but they apparently are willing to stipulate that it is only regulated medical waste. That's the only thing we would be approving tonight is regulated medical waste. Non-regulated medical waste or non-medical waste would be not allowed under this conditional use permit. That's about as good as you can do. If they meet KDHE regulations in every other respect as to safety, then that leaves us with, denying this on the basis that the neighbors don't think it's a good idea without any evidence to suggest that it's not a good idea, other than just generalized concerns. I do think we have an obligation to make decisions here based on what the actual evidence is we have before us, which at this point is that, yes, we cannot resolve all the neighbors' concerns, but we have to pay heed to the fact that KDHE has a responsibility to regulate this. And should they do something which creates a public safety hazard in any sort that comes to the knowledge of anyone, then obviously that's a regulatory enforcement issue with KDHE. And again, I don't think we would ever be able to fully resolve the concerns of the neighbors without just saying no, but then nowhere in these regulations does it give adjoining property owners a veto right over whatever goes in that site. And that's a good thing because you don't want to have that. But apparently there are multiple sites around, and I think there's some in Johnson County. I didn't complete my Google search, but I just looked at them again, and I think there are some. But apparently there are at least 10 or 12 in the Kansas City area that do regulated medical waste and non-regulated medical waste disposal. So it's not a new kid on the block. It's just another one coming into the area. So I guess my comment to the two that they're suggesting we not approve it for the reason they do, that I honor their concerns, but yet they're, other than just generalized, we don't know what this really does. I don't think, anybody on this board's in a position to to really solve that problem. But on the evidence we have before us, it's all going to be regulated by KDHE. And they seem to be taking reasonable precautions here, consistent with those KDHE regulations to get their permit to operate. So in that respect, although I hope we don't have any issues here, and I hope the neighbors come to believe their concerns were unverified and unjustified, I do think that certainly we're going to hope that KDHE watches this. The neighbors watch it. If anything comes up, they can bring it back to our attention. I'm going to include a stipulation if a motion is made that they also have to consult with fire folks before they get a temporary occupancy permit for this to make sure they know and have all their questions answered. So from my perspective, I would tend to support this containing those regulations if a motion is made. And I'm not saying that all of my concerns are completely eliminated. I just don't think it's reasonable for us to try to eliminate every concern, particularly when there's apparently no evidence whatsoever that it's going to be a safety concern to anyone, other than just a generalized concern that, regulated medical waste might be a problem. If they're properly handled, apparently they aren't. So I guess that's my thought, in that there's only so far we can go to address the concerns of the neighbors. Although I certainly understand why they're making them. That's my comment.
This is Ken. Finally, we have an application I have some familiarity with, being in healthcare for 30 years myself. So I'm familiar with these types of facilities, the work that goes on there. I do believe, as it relates to Stillwell, I would look at a stipulation that it is for the regulated medical waste and that it's not for any placard chemicals, because that seems to be where we encroach. The other concern we've had in other settings is the off-site storage, where trucks are arriving after hours and then they're parked there and then unload in the morning. And this already addresses the stipulations in here that there'll be no on-site storage outside of the facility, so everything would be in the facility. I think that's an important criteria, different than potentially other locations. And I would be supportive of a 5-year CUP. From a complaints regulation, where are we? Are we running the business the way we kind of designed and expected to run the business? And then have that more or less come through as just a renewal of let's see where we are with that, not, shut down operations concept. And then, again, for Jeff and Sean who had spoke, we are just a recommending body. We still have to go to the commissioners that will ultimately make the final decision for us. But those are the areas where I would be. Ken?
No, I'm ready to make a motion when you're ready.
Yeah, I had a couple things I wanted to add to the motion.
Haven't made it yet, so go ahead.
But you go ahead. You go ahead and I'll,
Or if you've written it up, if you want to make a motion.
No, go ahead. If you can do the read.
Fred Winger, Mr. Chairman, I move and recommend approval of the final development plat for the proposed Lot 1, Metcalf 211, 6 plat and a conditional use permit for and I want to change the word hazardous waste facility to a regulated medical waste processing facility, an outdoor storage yard for truck trailers for the reasons and included stipulations in the staff report. Added number 6, facility is limited to store and process regulated medical waste. No infectious waste, hazardous waste, or radioactive waste will be stored or processed at the site.
Term.
I recommend a term of 5 years. For number 7, the applicant agrees to consult with the local fire department about safety measures, or however you want to word that, appropriately staffed.
I just add to the latter one, prior to issuance of a temporary occupancy permit, that they simply consult with the fire department to fully acquaint the fire department with their facility and to answer any questions they may have.
And not included in the motion, but a strong recommendation to use the 223rd Street exit for trucks and box trucks, and there's zero traffic there. It seems operational would be a benefit as well.
If I can add to that, it's kind of for the purpose of the fact that there'll be a developed soccer field complex that'll be in operations. One point of discussion before I seek a second on that, you commented on infectious in your motion, but I believe.
I looked up the classes of medical waste.
Okay,
So there's infectious, hazardous, radioactive, general. And from what I understood, this is regulated medical waste.
Oh, yeah, we'll
Yeah,
need the
sorry,
applicant
sorry,
to come to the
sorry.
podium, yeah.
I'm asking the applicant to provide clarification before we make a motion on that.
Yeah, so, my name again.
Oh, go
Jason
ahead.
McAnulty. Trace chemo is essentially a byproduct of radioactive waste. So you do have a very minuscule amount of radioactive trash there. Like I said, it has to be less than 3% for it to be put in a yellow chemo container. Infectious waste, as Chairman was about to say, I believe that regulated medical waste is infectious waste. And essentially just a little backstory about regulated medical waste. It came around and had to be regulated in 1987. And what had happened was all the clinics, all the doctor's offices, all the hospitals were just taking all the waste and just throwing it in the normal trash. Well, over in the Northeast part of the country, they take their trash out on barges. Well, when they were on barges, needles and stuff would fall out, and it was all washing up on the shore of beaches in New Jersey. So it was killing tourism. So here we are, now we're regulating medical waste. That was in 1987. So yes, regulated medical waste, infectious waste is a subculture of that. I'm not sure how we work around that phrase.
Regulated non-placard. because it is infectious reasons going there before, so it can be decontaminated before.
You're thinking about this, Rod Richardson, do you know, does KD, I don't have it in front of me, but if I went to KDHE's regs, would it define exactly what regulated medical wastes are?
It will, just like Mr. Fred here Googled it, it'll break it down like that.
All right. So could we not say storage will be limited to medical waste, regulated medical waste under applicable KDHE regulations?
A lot of faith in KDHE, but I'll support that.
Okay. At least we have a standard then we can go to and hope it works.
Thank you for the clarification on discussion. With that modification, boy, I feel bad for the person who's transcribing this. For that modification, do we want to review that one more time? Or are we good to make a second and
Mr.
approve?
Chairman, for staff's perspective, make sure we have that correctly. I would like to clarify. So we do have the additional stipulation recommended regarding the applicant shall meet with the fire district prior to occupancy permit. Just for a friendly amendment request, I would suggest that that might be more appropriate under the final development plan stipulations. So that'd be a stipulation 9. Now, for the uses for the conditional use permit, we do have the recommendation for permitted uses shall only, for the medical or for the regulated medical waste facility shall only include regulated medical waste per the applicable KDHE regulations. Was there any other specific stipulations?
5 years.
5 years.
Oh, 5-year term. Yeah, I have that marked out. Yeah, 5 years. Correct.
And in the suggested motion that Fred proposed, use of the permit, we're changing out the hazardous waste processing facility to read regulated medical waste processing facility.
Yes.
And a
Yes.
recommendation, just a strong recommendation that they consider using alternate exit at 223rd Street or ingress egress from 223rd. Not a requirement, but a strong recommendation.
And the neighborly recommendation once the soccer complex is up and running.
Use Miami County roads, run them
Sure.
down.
Staff can certainly include that in the briefing sheet to the Board of County Commissioners. That will not be a stipulation, of course, of approval, but we can certainly include that in the recommendations in the briefing sheet to the board.
Okay.
Do I hear a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, this will go to before the county commissioners in May.
This is Michelle. On May 1st, at their meeting here in this room at 9:30 a.m.
All right, thank you. Left on our agenda, other business before the board?
And then one final application for
Sorry.
the final plat is the one.
Oh, sorry.
So we
Thank
did
you.
have
So,
one related
we have one more
application.
item before the board. Application number E 25465 FPAU, final plat for 210th Street. Sorry about that. Thanks. Michelle?
Yes, Michelle Loniger, County Planning Staff. This is a replat of Lot 1 of medical Metcalf 211 fifth plat. So this will be Metcalf 211 sixth plat. So here's the aerial of the subject property. This is the parcel that is proposed to be split into two. What you've seen on the preliminary development plan, the final development plan, is this lot split into 2 lots. Lot 1 is proposed to be 5 acres, which is the north part. Lot 2, which is the south part, is proposed to be 10.8 acres. The applicant has provided stormwater and traffic memos regarding the uses and the split through the PDP process, and it will not increase the stormwater or traffic impacts from what was previously approved. Staff does recommend approval of the final plat for a two-lot subdivision to be known as Metcalf 211 6th plat. Here's a suggested motion, and I can take any questions, and the applicant is also here.
Confirming, Michelle, this is Ken. This is the final plat of item A.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
And
Any
it,
questions?
and it creates the lot for item B.
Correct. Any questions of staff?
No.
Would the applicant have anything he'd like to say? Nothing from the applicant. Do we have any, buddy for public comment on the final plat?
No, we do not.
We'll go ahead and close public comment, discussion on the board. Not expecting,
No, Mr. Chairman, Rod Richardson, it would appear this meets all the requirements, and if there are no other comments, I'm prepared to move for approval.
any other comments? Go ahead.
All right, Rod Richardson, I move to approve application number E25-465-FP for a final plat for a two-lot subdivision to be known as Metcalf 211 6th plat for the reasons listed in the staff report.
Do I have a second?
Ken Sanderson, second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye, and this will go to the county commissioners May 1st as well.
May 1st at 9:30 a.m. here in this room.
Okay, I apologize for that. Now we can move on to other business for the board. Is there any?
Nope.
Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
So
moved.
moved.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.
Everybody.